Let's jump right into it. Underwriting. What is underwriting, Chris, and how does it affect the home buying process?
Okay, Matt. So this is super important.
Okay.
Particularly right now in this market. There are 4 levels of loan approval that we could simplify this into. So if you have never bought a house and you are looking to get pre-approved, this is how I'm going to explain the 4 levels of pre-approval to you. Or excuse me, the 4 levels of approval to you. 1 is pre-qualification. Pre-qualification is what a lot of people get in the mailbox. So you'll get these letters that say, hey, you're pre-qualified for this loan or this credit card or this or that. What pre-qualification means is that a lender, a bank, some institution has evaluated you based on very basic information. Either they think that you're good for a loan or you have provided some sort of verbal or written information that says you're decent for a loan, but there's been no verification and no official process. Pre-qualification always sounds like a flashy word, but it really has next to no approval actually attached to it at all. It's almost more of a marketing tactic, pre-qualification is, particularly because these words all sound very similar. Yeah. So on a consumer level, you wouldn't know that. So that's the base level, pre-qualification. Pre-approval, the lender, the institution, is going to take that to the next level. So for a pre-approval, they're going to get copies of your pay stubs to see what you say. And they're not just going to take your word on it or assume. They're going to get copies of your pay stubs, maybe tax returns. They're actually going to do a little bit of verification on this. In our case, we do pay stubs, we do tax returns, we do bank statements, and we do ID. We want to make sure everything's square. We don't want to send a client out into the marketplace and have them lose because we didn't take the proper steps to get them where they want to be. So that's pre-approval. Pre-approval carries more confidence than the pre-qualification because of these verification factors.
Yeah.
Any real estate agent or home seller is going to expect you to at least be pre-approved. Pre-qualification carries no weight when you're shopping for a house. Pre-approved does. So pre-approved is when you've talked to me, we've done the application, we've pulled credit, we've gotten those documents, and you look good for the loan. Now, there's 2 more steps, though. That's the traditional one when shopping for a house, and the other 2 come after. So the other 2, the first one is called conditional approval. Conditional approval is when we go an extra mile. We have you sign some paperwork that allows us to get verifications from your employer to say that those pay stubs are legitimate and that how long you've been on the job, some other things that aren't on the pay stubs. We're going to send a request to the IRS, and they're going to verify that your tax returns are legitimate. We're going to do this and that and other things very similar to this strain. That's going to be your conditional approval because then the human, like an employee of that lender, is going to review it. This employee is called the underwriter. The underwriter is going to review these documents that we've added, assess the risk of you to that lender, and then decide whether or not you get that loan. If you do, then it's going to be called a conditional approval. Conditional refers to the conditions that must be met for you still to finalize that loan. And those conditions are typically things like we need the appraisal on the property to come in. It needs to appraise high enough. We're not going to loan you $500,000 for a $300,000 home, stuff like that. Very reasonable things. And then the final step is clear to close. Clear to close means all of those conditions, that appraisal, anything else, has been satisfied. The underwriter reviewed it and they say, oh, excellent. You've checked all the boxes. You are officially good for this loan. Let's set a closing date and you're going to get the money. That's clear to close. So those are the 4 levels. Pre-qualification, pre-approval, conditional approval, clear to close. So when people normally shop with the pre-approval, that's great because it means that we have verified those documents. But if they can step that up to a conditional approval and their real estate agent's savvy enough to recognize the difference, which most are, they're going to advise the seller to take the person, or at least prioritize the person that's gone to that extra level of approval, because that's much safer for their sellers. If your seller's selling a house, you want them to get money after they accept an offer. So you want to go with the folks that are most apt to actually get you that money, and those are the people that have added that extra layer of approval.
Makes total sense. Tbd Underwriting. Explain that for us, though.
So that's what we call it. When TBD means to be determined. So let's go with the typical route again. A typical lender will pre-approve you. You go out, you make an offer on a house, and that seller accepts. And then then we do all the IRS verification, the employer verification. We're going to do a Social Security administration. There's even a form that every lender has you sign because it's required, but it allows us to run you through basically what is a terrorist database sponsored by the FBI. We're doing all of that at that conditional approval level. So normally this occurs after you have an accepted offer. So if Matt, you're buying 123 Main Street, you get that offer accepted, that's when we start that process. In this scenario, when we're talking about upgrading from the pre-approval to the conditional approval, then we're going to do that before you have an offer on 123 Main Street. Because there's not an address, that's why we call it TBD Underwrite, to be determined. We don't know what house you're going to buy, but we're going to evaluate everything we can prior. That's why that fourth level, clear to close, that's impossible to get before you have a house because we have to, the lender has to make sure that the house itself qualifies. So you can't get all the way to clear to close, but you can get to that third or fourth step prior. And that's what the TBD and TBD Underwrite means.
At least have your part of the situation taken care of, correct?
Nailed down.
Yeah. I'm glad we started the show with this because we've talked pre-approval, but this is even a further example. And the reason I think, like you said, it's super important, in today's market, you're battling. Correct? I mean, wouldn't it be better to bring everything to the table at the beginning and have that already figured out and be able to lay it out there and essentially put you up towards the front of the line?
That's exactly right. So this isn't necessarily a new thing, but it's not something that a year ago or 2 years ago or 8 years ago I would have ever thought I would have, talked this publicly about because lenders traditionally they pre-approve someone, you go shop and then the seller sees your pre-approval and they're fine with that.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't a traditional market that we're in.
Yeah.
This is a very competitive market. It's a fight out there. It's a battle,
like
you said, Matt. So if you've got 40 individuals making an offer on a home, you need to bring everything that you can. And this has not always been the case. It's very rarely the case, but it certainly is right now with the housing inventory being so low. So if you can prioritize yourself and be the cream on the top, you're going to have a lot more success out there. It doesn't cost anything extra. Lenders have always been hesitant to do this in the past because they have to allocate more resources. They have to pay underwriters to review before there's a house or anything, and it costs them more money. Right now, there's less transactions, so lenders tend to be more open to doing it. Not everyone is still. We certainly are. It costs nothing else. It takes normally just a day or two, and we can get you that extra level, put you right on top of everyone else. If there's 40 offers on a house, I bet 35 to 38 of them are not conditionally approved.
Yeah, no, I'm that was the main point of it. I think that's brilliant. It can't expect. You mentioned it in today's market. It makes